Hey y'all, thanks for checking out this episode of the Extraordinary Podcast. Today's episode we're going to be talking about grief with my good friend Jason Mueller. I originally created this episode due to the events of COVID-19, but I also received word today that my good friend Heather Reese lost her battle with cancer. And so I guess it's kind of fitting that this episode is about grief and the grieving process, because it's certainly something that is going to apply to my life now and to many of my dear friends who were also very close with Heather. So we'd like to dedicate this episode to Heather Reese. Thanks and enjoy. Comprehending loss and experiencing grief are universal and fundamental aspects of life none of us can escape. Yet often we feel unequipped to process tragedy and understand the grieving process. All too often, we bottle up our emotions, try to appear as if everything is fine, and never allow ourselves to accept the pain and the suffering that comes from loss. But unfortunately, it is necessary. It is critical to our overall well-being and mental health that we give ourselves permission to hurt, recognize why it's there, and through time and effort, allow that pain to subside. Eventually, you will move on to the next phase and slowly begin to feel normal again. Although after experiencing tragic loss, normal will never be the same. But the new normal can ultimately be better than before. And through time and patience, you will grow and become stronger, better for having endured it. Jason Mueller experienced grief and loss on a scale virtually none of us can comprehend. He was hit with a tragedy that would destroy most people. Suffering the loss of a child is something none of us should have to experience, and quite frankly, I don't know that I could handle it. But Jason not only learned how to handle it, he's now helping others handle their grief as well. Volunteering in his community and ministering in his church, Jason is serving as a beacon of hope to those who have lost loved ones and seek solace in their lowest moments. And the best way that he does this is by simply filling the chair, being there to listen, there to empathize, there to understand. Although many don't know what he has gone through, he is one of the few people who can understand and relate to loss like no one else can. And after speaking with him, it's clear to see that this is not the path he chose, but rather a calling he has been given, and one that he uses to honor his son every day. And celebrating his son's life has brought joy and inspiration to countless others. Hear how Jason manages the grieving process in my first in-person interview in a while with my dear friend, Jason Mueller.
No, love grilling steaks, man. One of our favorites is I make a garlic and herb butter. Ooh. And I put it in an iron skillet. So I do it cooked on the stovetop first, and then I put it in the oven and bake it in that sauce. And it's just, it's unreal, man.
Make you want to slap your mama.
It does. Yeah.
I love it. I love it.
Without a doubt.
Do you guys harvest any meat up here, or do you just old school?
No, just old school. Either go to the butcher or go to Whole Foods. Or Whole Foods, I found, has probably one of the best meat selections. So I love going to Whole Foods to get my meats.
Yeah, but isn't it like super expensive?
It is. Yeah. And most of the time it's like a King Super. But we'll go to Whole Foods every once in a while. Like if we're having people over and I want to get a good slice of meat, then we'll go there.
Well, and I've actually been trying to reduce a little bit of my red meat. I'm trying to do like a meatless Monday for sure, and then trying to incorporate, especially red meat, but just like incorporate a more vegetarian-based diet.
Right. Mm-hmm. What we're doing. Dude, I've been thinking for the last hour and a half that we've been together. Dude, I can't believe it's been 20 plus years.
Yeah, I was thinking about that. So,
because my son would have been 21 this last January. I don't think I've seen you since I left UPS.
I was going to say, yeah, because the reunions, we weren't at the same reunions.
And he was only 1 when I left UPS, so.
Wow. So that's what, 20?
20. Well, he would have just turned 21 this last January, so call it 22 maybe. He might have been like 8 months old when I left UPS.
I ended up 7, 8 years over there.
Because I saw the greener side going back to the fitness industry and got to be a manager. So,
Yeah.
I thought I was a big shot. And,
Well, anything to get you out of P-Dale Hub, man. That
20,
place will
20-something years old, early 20s, and, you're handed this big facility. You think you're a big shot, making six figures.
Yeah, it's like, do you want to hang out in a warehouse with a bunch of dirty, sweaty dudes, or you want to go to a gym where there's a bunch of chicks in yoga pants and you're the HNIC,
Absolutely.
Oh, that's great.
Without a doubt.
Well, let's we'll go ahead and jump right into this thing, man. This is the Extraordinary Podcast, and my guest today is Jason Mueller.
Glad to be here, man. I appreciate you doing this.
Yeah, so we were just talking, so we go way back. Way back. And where are we? What are we doing?
So we are just outside of Denver, Colorado.
Yeah.
We are just down the street and from Nate's family's house over here in Arvada, Colorado.
Good old Lake Stanley.
Just, Stanley Park. I've never been here. Nathan actually brought me to it, so got to bring somebody from Georgia to bring me to a new part of Denver, but just absolutely gorgeous.
Yeah.
So
well, it's funny. Beautiful. I've got Little Mulberry as my stomping grounds in Georgia, where I post a lot of pictures and stuff of where I like to spend my activity, running around and acting a fool, and Stanley Lake Park is my stomping grounds when I'm in Colorado. So this is the ideal place for us to do this. I'm really grateful that we were able to get together and reconnect, man, after all these years. We were just talking about we went to high school together, and we're not going to share too many of those stories to keep us out of trouble both. We've both since matured and grown a lot since then, and then we actually got to spend some time working together at UPS.
Yeah, absolutely,
Good
man.
old P-Dale Hub.
Man, you think back to Chattahoochee, 90, I think we met probably 91, 92.
Yeah,
somewhere in there. I graduated 93, you 94, and
hey, you're not supposed to share that. We're supposed to keep on that.
Life. Come on, man.
Now we're really dating ourselves.
I'm coming up on 45 in 30 days, so
it's crazy, right?
2 weeks actually.
Oh wow,
2.5 weeks, but
I'm right around the corner from you.
Yeah, it's good, man.
Yeah.
Life is good.
It is. We've both been tremendously blessed. It's been an interesting set of circumstances these past 20 years since we've gotten together, and that's actually kind of was the impetus for us getting back together again. Not that we should ever use that as an excuse, and I'm really excited about the future plans that we're already making above and beyond this to continue to get together and to help each other out and to grow the friendship, all that kind of good stuff. But just to kind of preface all this is going to be a pretty intense podcast, I feel like. And so I wanted to kind of give the listeners the heads up. We're going to be talking about grief today and how you deal with grief and manage grief and the process of doing that. And so we're going to be talking about some sensitive topics for both of us, and Jason's prepared to share some personal experiences that had some pretty major impact in his life and some really difficult circumstances. So I just wanted to kind of preface that before we get into it. Most of our episodes try to bring personal development concepts, but dealing with grief is a personal development concept, and it's something I feel like a lot of people are lacking. Like we were talking about this earlier in our run this morning. A lot of people are lacking those skills, and you had a situation come up where you were having to deal with grief, and then were able to transition from your own personal grief into helping others deal with their grief. And so I kind of wanted to start off the episode with you sharing your experience.
Yeah, no, and again, Nate, I'd greatly appreciate doing this. And, when I reached out to you about doing this podcast, it was something that it helps me get through my grief, because it's something that I'll always continue to go through, and it eats at me every day. So for those that are listening, you hear me choke up, I do apologize on that, but it's definitely part of it. So in April of 2018, I lost my son, Austin. He was 19 years old. He was shot and killed by his best friend. Got into an argument. Friend pulled out a gun and shot him, killed him. So, I remember getting a phone call that night that Austin's mom was with her husband. They were in Puerto Rico that weekend actually celebrating her birthday. And my phone rang, and it was my wife now, Jada. And Jada said, hey, somebody's calling my phone saying that Austin's been hurt. Why don't you try calling his phone and see what's going on? So I made a phone call, and they said, yeah, Austin's been hurt. There was an accident. He's been shot. That's all I knew, right? So you can only imagine the just immediate gut-wrenching, just the worst thing that you could imagine hearing about your kid. So I made a couple phone calls. I had a buddy of mine. This was all down in Orlando. I had a buddy of mine that was a sheriff down there, and so I called him and I said, "Hey, man, can you look into this? See if there's anything that's going on. Find some details for me." So in the meantime, I called Austin's mom to let her know that, hey, he's been shot. He's in the hospital, or he's on his way, or whatever the case was at that point. And in between making that phone call, my buddy, the sheriff, had made some phone calls, and he called me back. And when he called me back, I answered the phone, and he was just bawling. He was crying harder than first of all, I've known the guy 10, 15 years. I don't think I've ever heard him cry. And I just immediately knew. I knew what was wrong. And it was at that moment that I hit my knees harder than I've ever hit. And I felt like rock bottom was there. Life couldn't get any lower. And I had a buddy of mine whose house that we were over at. I was with my daughters. My wife and a bunch of her girlfriends were doing a kind of a mom's night. So we were over at my buddy's house, and my kids were downstairs, thank goodness. And, he was the first person to pick me up off the floor. Mark Bombich. I definitely want to put his name out there. Very important guy in my life. Again, excuse me. I told you I was going to choke up. So, he picked me up, and, Jada came back over to the house where I was, and you begin a process of starting to make phone calls to people. And you've got to call. First of all, I had to call his mom and tell her. Oh. And you want to talk about full circle in life. I'll never forget the day that she called me to let me know that she was pregnant with my son, right? Happiest day of my life. And I had to be the one to call her to let her know that that son was now gone. So just tough moments that, as we proceed through this, you'll understand what they've built and kind of where I'm at today. But you just start making the phone calls. You start calling friends. You start calling family. I had to call his grandparents. I had to call my brother that he was close with. And, it was just, I guess the best way to put it, just an absolute nightmare. Yeah. Nightmare of a time.
Yeah.
But
and the fact that you're still kind of in shock of it. I mean, like, that's such a hard thing to even comprehend, to even begin to even understand, like, or realize that that's real, because that doesn't feel real, at first. Man. Can imagine. Jordan Peterson talks a lot about be the man that people can depend on at your father's funeral. But trying to do that with your kids got to be even tougher.
Well, and it was, and we did we didn't do a funeral, we did a celebration of life, and we did it at my brother's house, and brother's got a beautiful piece of property down there, and it was overlooking a lake, and my son had been out there with my brother fishing and spent some time at my brother's house. And so it was awesome, man. We probably had 130 people there. And it was just, it was killer, you know, and we requested that everybody wear red and black. And, my son shared my love for Georgia.
Go Dogs.
And so we requested that. And there were some people that still showed up in orange and blue because, we were down in Florida. So, and I remember making a joke about it. We kind of pulled everybody together, and my son's mom wanted me to kind of speak, so I had to speak to everybody at that moment. And then we did a viewing. We weren't going to do a viewing, but we did do a viewing a couple days later with just immediate family and some close friends. And we did that viewing, and then we said goodbye. So, and then that began kind of a journey of grief that was just, it was a journey I didn't understand. And then 4 months later, on August 4th, I found out that, I lost my older brother, Scott. So it was a 4-month period that just, it was a whirlwind, man.
Kicks in the teeth.
I mean, man, I've been through, divorces, and I've been through just, moving away from friends that you love. And you go through all these different levels of grief in life, and you don't understand them because you get over them pretty quick. Right, it's life, and you just get over it. It stings and it hurts, but this one, you just won't ever get over it. And it's been a lot. It's been a life lesson. Yeah. So that brings us to where we're at today.
Yeah. So we're going to be covering the 4 stages of grief, and we're going to probably do this over a series of podcasts. And today we're going to be focusing on that first step in the grieving process. So let's talk about that for you once you deal with that initial shock, and then now you've got to have the viewing and kind of laid things to rest to a certain extent. That's fine for the rest of the world, and that's fine for your son, but that doesn't resolve anything for you personally. Like, you still have to start that process of figuring out how to pick your life back up and put the pieces back together for you personally. So what did that look like for you?
So we went through another major life change after we lost my brother. We moved to Colorado from the D.C., Maryland area. Came at a great time in our life. And
now, that was something that you guys just decided to do, or you guys just needed to change the scenery, or how did that come to be?
Well, I tell you, it was so we were a big part of our church in Maryland, and we had a lot of close friends there, and Maryland was definitely home. Our church was home, and everything was really helping us get through this. And we got the phone call from my wife's company when we were down in Florida for my brother's services, and they had decided to kind of set up some operations in Denver, and asked my wife if she wanted to head that up. And that was a great opportunity for her career. Extremely proud of her, and she, her career's given us some opportunities that we're just blessed and thankful for. But it came at a time where we needed it.
Yeah.
And we needed a change. We needed something that occupied our mind and our time, and just gave us something new and exciting to look forward to. And the move to Colorado was it.
It's a huge way to close a chapter and begin anew.
Absolutely. And, closing that chapter was tough because of the relationships that we had, and the family there as well. I definitely don't want to forget talking about them. My cousin Chuck and his wife Ann, who were Austin's godparents.
And that was when y'all were in Maryland?
They lived in Maryland as well, and we're extremely close with them and still are today. And like I said, Austin's godparents, and so leaving them was extremely hard. My aunt and uncle and my other cousin out there, John, and so it was just a lot of family, just a lot of closeness out there. So it was extremely hard to leave, but it was, Jada and I really felt like it was the best thing for our family, it was the best thing for our girls.
It did seem like a bit of a calling at that point.
To try and go and create something new,
yeah.
and really kind of put something new and exciting. And it was awesome to be able to come out here. It wasn't, work was a big part of the discussion, but it was also, coming out here to be with my wife's side of the family, which she hadn't lived near her family in probably 20 plus years. And so it was really cool for her to be able to come home, not home, but come back and live in the same state and same city as her mom and dad.
To reestablish a closer relationship than what you were used to.
And her only sibling, she's only got one sister, and to be able to establish that relationship with her sister Elena was huge. So it was good for my girls. I wanted my girls to have grandparents around, and we knew we weren't going back to Florida.
Right.
And we knew my parents weren't ever leaving Florida. So it was really cool to have them be around, grandparents consistently.
Yeah.
And have, their Aunt Elena and just have that family relationship.
Well, and again, like, you were walking away from a support system with your church and the family that you had in Maryland. And so much of this stuff, and especially dealing with grief, is about having a good support system. So I don't know that you would have been able to make that move without her family being here, because that provided you another level of safety and comfort and security that just resources to rely on. God, it's so important, right?
No, it is, and it was huge. Could the move have happened? It could have, but it definitely would have been a lot harder. And I don't think it would have been as easy to not have some close family here that, still going through the times that we were going through. I mean, at this point, when we moved out here, we were 4.5 months removed from Austin, and we were
only like
we
month
were 27 days removed from my brother.
Yeah.
Right. So, I mean, a lot of things were still fresh.
So, yeah, I mean, you really weren't even, you were just beginning the grief cycle at that point, really. So let's talk about that. Once you got to Colorado and things began to settle down, you were able to, continue this grief process. So let's talk a little bit about the grief process. Give us a little bit of an overview of how you figured out how you were going to try to manage all this, and then what that looks like. And then we'll talk about some of the specifics of each step.
Yeah, so we came out here, and my wife went right to work, and I was unemployed, so I started looking for a job, and I look back on it now, and maybe it was good that I had 30, 60 days to still kind of sit in it for a minute and not stay busy. I mean, we were busy with the girls being in a new school, my wife working, new area, but it was also I had a lot of downtime to myself during the day. So there were definitely a lot of dark days, a lot of depression, a lot of sadness. Didn't want to get up and do anything. Probably put on some LBs that I really didn't want to put on. They tend to find you pretty quick.
Yeah.
But it was part of the process I had to go through. It was I've never been a drug user. I've never been a heavy drinker, so I really didn't use those things. I think I used more just kind of just vegging out and just really just kind of getting lost in my own mind. Yeah. And so it was a process. But we found a church out here, which coincidentally we left our church that I'd mentioned before in Maryland that we were a big part of. Is called Mountain View in Frederick, Maryland. And when I started researching churches out here before we moved, the fourth one down on the list was Mountain View. And it was in Highlands Ranch, and it was a mile from our house. And I mean, just what a calling, Yeah. I mean, God planted that for us, and I truly believe that. And I mean, it was just awesome. And it was the same type of setup. Pastors couldn't be more alike.
Huh.
I mean,
but there was no affiliation.
No affiliation at all. But just both sports fanatics.
How about
both
that?
Just, very relaxed and kind of laid back in their delivery and just awesome guys.
Had a delivery that appealed to you, because a lot of times when you go
Right.
to a church, some preachers don't necessarily appeal to everybody, but that one.
Absolutely. And that does appeal to me, right? Because, I mean, I grew up in the Catholic Church and absolutely nothing wrong with it. But it wasn't for me, right? It wasn't the life, the path that I wanted to follow with that. And this one touches me. This one reaches me. So anyway, we moved out. I reached out to the head pastor and had coffee with him one morning. And it was funny when we sat down, we were talking at a Starbucks, and he started laughing after I kind of spilled everything to him. And I'm kind of looking at him like, why is this guy chuckling? And he goes, Jason, I had no idea why you called me. He said, I thought maybe you were calling me because you're brand new to the area. Maybe you wanted to give me your resume to help you find a job. He's like, I really didn't expect that you were going to tell me all this. And, it was just kind of awesome.
Dump this onto my lap.
Right. I mean, he just started laughing and we just had such a great talk. And so he connected me with who is now a really, really good friend, but he's also my mentor, Dan Hedinger, who's our care pastor at the church. And Dan just and
explain to those who don't know what a care pastor is.
So a care pastor really kind of looks over the people in the church. So this is more just from a different side of life, more from a care ministry. So whether that's he does a lot of hospice work. He does a lot of hospital calls. He does a lot of grief work in the community, Stephen ministry. So he's involved in a lot of stuff that goes for the actual care of the members of the church versus, I guess, if you will, the messages every Sunday or
right.
the business side of it, right? Because it still is. I mean, at the end of the day, and we know that, but he's involved in more of the people side of things.
Yeah. And that's the side of it that appeals to you as well. That's where
it is.
Kind of felt your niche.
It really started touching me the more that he and I met. It started hitting me harder and harder that was what I wanted to get involved in. Austin, if there's one way that I can describe my son, and I describe him differently now than when he was with us. But, I look at him now, and the kid had a heart that you really just couldn't describe. I mean, he would drop anything to go and help somebody. He absolutely loved, helping out with, like, wounded vet organizations. He was a big-time runner, which he absolutely did not get that from me. He did not get that from his dad by any means. But he did. He loved running in. He ran in some Wounded Warrior 5Ks, 10Ks, ran in Operation Give Back, and did a lot of things.
And in all seriousness, his stepfather was a wounded vet as well, correct?
His stepdad, Joe Eason, outstanding guy. And I've told him a million times that if I couldn't be present for my son, I couldn't imagine a better man to be present for him. And I told him that from when my son was young to this day. But, awesome. Joe Eason's a wounded vet, Purple Heart. But he's fighting for his life now as well. So he's fighting ALS. Mm. And it's something that's come on and hit that family very hard. And it's come on, and I mean, he just got diagnosed in September. And he's I mean, he lives his life in a wheelchair and really can't speak, has a feeding tube. So, I mean, it's really gone after him hot and heavy. So, I mean, it's something that we continue to pray for, and there's different, petitions you can sign and different things like that. So I'm not with them, but I'm with them.
Yeah.
I just can't even imagine what that family's going through. And, it's the loss of Austin has brought us so close. My ex-wife and I lived this typical ex-wife, ex-husband relationship that, in all honesty, society tells you have to live, right? Society tells you that you're not supposed to like your ex-wife. You're not supposed to like your ex-husband. You're supposed to be angry at him. You're supposed to just always battle. And in all honesty, the day that I lost my son, every single ounce of whatever I had in me absolutely just went away.
Any animosity
and
just
it's never
dissolves.
come back. And it's never come back, and it never will. I will absolutely fight. I'll never let it come back. Her and Austin had a relationship that was just unreal, man. I mean, and it was something I never understood, and I think it aggravated me over the years because maybe it was closer than my relationship with him. And he and I had a fantastic relationship, but him and his mom, I mean, it was something special.
Yeah, that special bond.
I mean, it really is, and that was.
But you always have that one parent that you, for whatever reason, create that kind of a closer bond with, or whatever. That just, it's something that's kind of unspoken, unsaid. It's just natural occurrence kind of thing. But
yeah. So I think I might have gotten off topic there, but
no, not at all.
So I found Mountain View, started getting into what grief really looks like. The first thing that I attended at the church was we do a Blue Christmas every year, and the Blue Christmas is to honor those that we've lost, and that's what it's an hour and a half long service. We read some scripture, and then we go around the room and everybody talks about those that they've lost, and they tell their story. And grief hits in so many different forms. And you've got people there that, whether they've lost a loved one, they've lost financial status, they've lost a job, they're going through grief. We've had people that have lost pets, and, it's just, grief is real.
Yeah.
And that was my first experience. And one of the things that Dan said when he spoke that night was, grief is something that you don't ever get over, but you will always find a way to get through it. And that stuck to me. Yeah. And that stuck extremely hard. And I do want to back up a little bit because there is somebody else that I want to kind of plug out there real quick. A buddy of mine that I worked for years ago who helped me in the very beginning with phone calls, and he took every phone call with me, and he came to see me. And but a guy by the name of Mike Fecht, and just an extremely great guy. He went through a tragic experience. His wife was murdered about 12 years ago at the hands of her own son. And Mike has lived his own grief process with this and continues to live it. And he's found a lot of different ways through yoga, through different things to really kind of get his way through this and to honor her. And I just, as I sit here and talk and so many different things come to your mind, I just want to make sure that I remember Mike because Mike was an absolute huge part of this process as well. But kind of getting back on topic, Dan we started meeting, and Dan just really started kind of walking me through this. And when I first started meeting with him, I had no idea that I wanted to get involved in anything. All I was trying to do was, how do I wake up tomorrow morning and without bawling my eyes out and hitting my knees? How do I accomplish that? How do I not cry on my 40-minute drive to work and then on my 40-minute drive home? How do I do that? And Dan kind of walked me through that. And there's 4 stages of grief, and that, initially you want to always make sure that you've got somebody in the other chair, right? And basically what that means is, you're sitting in one chair because life has attacked you, and you have to sit down, but you need to be able to talk to somebody. And so you need somebody in that other chair. You need somebody across from you that isn't there to fix your problem. They're not there to tell you that they understand how you feel, because unless they've gone through, well, even if they've gone through their own exact same loss, they still don't understand how you feel, right? Because it's different for everybody. So the other chair is one of the most important things that we always stress. The next step is trying to figure out what your new normal looks like, because everybody has to understand what their new normal is. Once you figure out that new normal, it's then kind of getting back into that day-to-day swing and living that new normal and understanding that, and then going through those stages. And then the last thing is, how do we honor that person? How do we set forth and set our next step in motion so that I can honor the person that I've lost? And that's kind of, I think I'm in stage 4. I think sometimes maybe I go back to stage 3 and 2, but I think stage 4 is where my life is at now. And
well, and what's cool about it is there's nothing wrong with that. There's nothing wrong with you're going to have days where it hits you really hard. You're going to have a memory that's triggered or something that's going to trigger you to feel that depression and to feel that sense of loss, And then there's going to be days where, the sun's shining, it's prompt a good memory, and it's going to make you kind of smile in the back of your head, So I don't think there's anything wrong with having to backtrack into some of those stages. But the one thing that I like that you talked about in the first stage is having someone in that other chair. And so much as we as guys, husbands in particular, and I'll speak for myself at least anyway, our wives come to us with problems, with stresses, with things that they're upset about, with things that they're frustrated with, and anything close to having to deal with the loss of a loved one. But we as guys, as husbands, we want to try to say, okay, well, let me figure out what the solution is. Let me provide a path so that we can fix what it is that's bothering you. And I know I am guilty of that repetitively, of always just trying to fix things, trying to come up with the solution, figure out the answer, because that's what I feel like I'm good at. But with grief and with our spouses in particular, it's like they're not looking for a fix. They're not looking for an answer. They're just looking for someone to hear them. They're just looking for that empathy, for that level of understanding. You don't have to say a word. All you have to do is just be there. Just be able to be there for them. And I think that's so important, like you were saying with the grief process. It's just about having someone there for you so that you can go through the process and feel like you're not alone, because the last thing you want to do is to have these thoughts and to have this stressful situation to deal with and then deal with it alone,
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, the person in the other chair has to always realize that you're not going to fix this person's problem. You absolutely aren't going to erase their grief.
Yeah. Nothing you say is going to bring them back.
And you can just listen to them, and if they need a hug, you give them a hug. Whatever the case is, you're essentially that shoulder to cry on. But having somebody in that other chair, I mean, I mentioned a buddy of mine earlier, Mark Bombich. He was my other chair for the longest time. I mean, he was that guy that just, amongst other friends, I've got so many of them. We talked about Brian Dotson earlier, who's just a very, very close friend, and
old school.
My buddy Trevor and Mike Pezzatoro, and just people that were just extremely close to me in my life. And you probably remember Katie Lordy. Mm-hmm. Yeah, so her and Mike are married. They've been married,
I did not know.
20 some odd years now, or whatever it is. But they're just, extremely close people, right? That took every phone call. Mark was that guy that stood out to me because he lived half a mile down the road.
He was physically there for you.
We were there. I mean, he took every phone call as well, but it was, okay, let's meet up and have a cup of coffee. Let's go drink a beer. Let's just get out of the house, because sitting by yourself sometimes, or even, and as strong as my wife is, and as big a rock as Jada is for me, and to this day she still is, you have to kind of separate it from that sometimes. And your other chair, maybe that's not the best other chair. You've got to be able to have another chair that can just have a unbiased view.
Well, yeah, because the person in that other chair can't be dealing with that same grief and tragedy that you're dealing with, because you need a sense of like an outsider perspective almost that just that can kind of keep you together a little bit. Because if you're breaking down and the other person's breaking down, then you're both breaking down and you're not getting anywhere. But like to have somebody that totally makes sense.
No, absolutely,
for sure.
So yeah, I mean, having the other chair is huge, and it's just and you're going to have multiple sessions. I mean, multiple.
Yeah. I
mean, Mark and I met probably 3 or 4 times a week, where he was just that other chair, and I mean, we did it constantly, and it just happens, but you need that. You absolutely can't just bottle it up and think that you're going to get through it, because you're not.
That's the worst that you can do. Well, and it seems to me, and you're more having dealt with this firsthand, you could probably explain this better than I can, but like anything, the more we talk it out, every time you say that story, every time you share the experience, it gets a little bit easier. It may only be just a fraction, and there's certainly going to be times where you'll bring it back up and it will then those emotions will resurface. But as you're trying to go through the grief process, the more that you can share that experience, the more that you can talk it out over and over and over again, then that does make it seem a little bit easier.
No, it does. And, you know, I remember in the beginning, I actually felt bad when I would talk about it to, you know, just if I brought it up or, you know, whatever. And I felt bad because I didn't want to make anybody else feel uncomfortable. And, you know, I had to get to a point to where my mind and my heart was okay talking about it, because it was, number one, it was kind of keeping Austin going, right? And it was keeping his memory alive. But, but at the same time, it was better for me, because the more I talked about it and the more I got it out there, the easier it was for me to talk about it.
Right.
And just the more, you know, just like even seeing your family this morning, and, you know, your mom asked about if I have any kids. And, you know, the first thing I always say is, you know, I had a 19-year-old son and I lost him, you know, a couple of years ago, and I've got 2 daughters, and, you know, you just kind of, you go through your progression of your kids now, right? But it is part of the normal conversation, because I can't ever answer that question and not include them.
Right. Like, how do
you know, it's, I mean, because it's real. I mean, like that is what I had, and he was my first, and, you know, it's, you just never not going to talk about him. But,
of course.
But continuing to talk about him is, I have found just awesome, honestly. And I love talking about him. And, you know, my wife and I talk about him sometimes, but my oldest daughter and I talk about him a lot.
Nice.
She had a really close relationship with him, and, you know, it's cool to talk about him.
Yeah.
You know, she'll bring it up, and she'll bring up something fun, and, you know, or we'll see something and it'll remind her of Austin. And
those are my favorites.
You know, we love, every time we see a cardinal, you know, because we told her that what the meaning of a cardinal is, and, you know, so now every time she sees a cardinal, it's always, you know, hey Dad, there's Austin, and
nice.
You know, so it's really cool to have those things, and you know, don't get me wrong, the gut wrench feeling is always there still,
sure,
right, and it still really pulls at you, but it's also awesome to kind of keep that going, and knowing that you can do it pretty much most of the time now without just completely breaking down,
right?
So.
Well, and it seems to me the benefit of it is that it comes full circle. Like with you, your ability to talk about Austin, like even just sharing it on this show, it's allowing you to help other people. And like with the Blue Christmas that you guys were talking about, the loss of your son has created a bit of a mission for you. It's created some purpose and direction in your life.
No, absolutely. And, you know, I always make it aware to everybody, and I just want to help people. Grief is definitely not something I ever want to see anybody go through alone. And it doesn't have to be grief of a lost loved one. It doesn't have to be the tragic loss that I had to deal with. You know, we lose grandparents to elderly age, or, you know, cancer, you know, which is horrible, or, you know, some people have lost people, you know, due to COVID or whatever the case may be. And those are all things that people are going to grieve on. And, you know, I just, helping those people get through that, you know, helping people understand and defining what grief is, you know, and a lot of people look at their grief and they ask themselves, am I normal? Well, you're absolutely normal. One of the things that I've learned is grief is the most common human experience. I mean, if you think of human experiences and you think of things that we go through, and I was taught this, it wasn't something I made up. I'd love to take credit for it, but, you know, it's if you think about it, we all go through grief, every single one of us, right? We all go through losing grandparents, right, or aunts and uncles that maybe pass away, things like that. I mean, hopefully not everybody's going to go through losing a child. You know, we lose a job, we go through a divorce, we lose friends that move away, whatever, but we all go through grief. So it's probably one of the most common things that we go through together.
Well, and one of the things, the philosophies that I've developed over time, and it's not my philosophy, it's actually kind of a Buddhist philosophy, is that life is suffering. The definition of life is suffering. And how you make your suffering worth it and meaningful makes it bearable, makes it manageable. If you can define your why, you can endure almost any how, you know? Right. And so it's like, we're all going to experience this tragedy. Suffering is a part of life. You know, that's just, like you're saying, it's part of the equation. But it's weird. No, we don't necessarily have a lot of the tools in place to deal with that.
Right.
Even though it is literally the definition of our existence.
No, it is, and that's a big thing of working with Dan of what we're trying to do now, and we do some things through church, through the care ministry, but we also are doing community grief classes, and we're teaching them in 4 different sessions. And I think that it's huge to be able to, get it away from the church. We still absolutely talk about our faith in it, and it's
it's centered around God at the end of the day.
As many rocks as I've had through all this, as many chairs as I've had, and all the strong people I've had in my life, I don't get through one day of this without God and without my faith and my belief.
Couldn't agree
and
more.
that is truly what's gotten me through this. And you and I talked about it earlier when we started which, by the way, Nate was really nice earlier when he said when we went on our run.
Yeah.
Nate runs, Jason walks. So just so
we
we're clear
did
on
mostly
that,
walk it.
he said, let's do a 5-minute run. I think it was like a 35-second run. But anyway, still good times. Man. Yeah. Still good times. But, doing this in the community is huge because you want people to talk about the grief, and you want people to get grief off of their hearts and out of their minds and really talk about it and beat it out of the chair and understand the process. And we really felt like if we kept it inside the church, that it would really hold some people back.
It would limit your audience.
And that's why we do it outside, just so that there's a clear separation on that. Faith is definitely behind this.
Yeah.
But we had talked about earlier how about a month before I lost Austin, I got baptized. And it was so huge, and Nate said it perfect, that, God just had this whole plan set in motion and just really put this together. And it was part of our life group back in Maryland that, they were all there when I got baptized, and they were all supporting me, and everything was just, it was really cool, and it was awesome. And then, you go a month later and you go through one of the most horrific things that you could ever think about going through. And just to know that, where your faith is, and I just couldn't have done this without God. And God, Mark picked me up off my knees that night for the very first time, but God was walking through Mark, and he's just been there every step of the way. And I'm not trying to turn this into a religious podcast by any means, but I can't get through my day to day without God.
Yeah.
I just can't do it. So
no, I could not agree more. We're both of that same ilk. But that being said, unfortunately, there are people who don't have that rock or that institution in their life, and so you guys are providing a way to deal with grief and providing this information outside the church so that people who aren't necessarily religious, who wouldn't necessarily have access to this, can still gain from this knowledge, can still learn how to go through this process. Because it doesn't matter which religion you are, if you're religious at all, this process is universal.
Absolutely.
It doesn't.
Well, one of the biggest thing is a lot of people don't understand the difference between grief and grieving.
Oh, explain that.
And there are differences.
I'm not sure that I do.
So if you think grief happens.
Okay.
Right? But grieving is what we do. Right? So my grief, right, was losing my son. My grief was going through that experience that night and getting those phone calls, and that was my immediate. So think of and Dan does this perfectly with his illustration, but think of you're kind of walking down the street, right, and you've got a cloud that's over you, and all of a sudden a lightning bolt just kind of hits you, right? Well, that's grief. Grief is that lightning bolt. So that's something that happens. Well, now it's the effects that last you the rest of your life. Well, that's your grieving, right? So there is a difference. Grief happens, and grief can go like that. Grieving is something that you're going to do day to day. And here I am, 2.5 years, let's just call it. I'm just a little short of 2.5 years, but 2.5 years removed from losing my son, and I'm still grieving.
Sure.
I mean, I've talked to people that lost parents 30 years ago, and they still to this day, they have days where they cry and they grieve. And so that's your biggest difference, is grief happens, and grieving is what we do. And it's just part of it.
So then what do we do from there?
So again, it's really, the 4 stages that we believe in is you're going through that first step of just putting somebody in the other chair and going through that process and talking about it. And you don't know how long that's going to take. So none of these steps have a time frame, right? Nobody can ever sit here and say, well, you need to do the first step, and that should take you 30 days, 60 days, and then we'll move on to the next one. It took me It took me almost a year, 10 months, 10 and a half months before I was able to wake up for the first time and not cry and not hit my knees. And was that too long? Was that too short? Was it? Nobody knows. There is no right answer.
There
but
is no
that's
answer to that question. Yeah.
That's how long it took for me to wake up and go, okay, this is my new normal. And
can you tell me about a day in time where you realize, or for the first, maybe not this first time, but a time where you kind of was the first time you kind of remember, I'm killing this. Can you share the experience of when the first time you kind of felt like, not that you had addressed it and can now move on, but the first time you felt like you were kind of normal again, or like that things were getting back to normal, or that you, like, it wasn't that like nightmare that you were living in? Or was it more just gradual over time?
You know, Nate, honestly, man, I think it was just gradual over time. I really can't go back to a day where I woke up and I was like, okay, life feels normal. Because it doesn't.
Never does.
Okay? I mean, I have pictures all over my house of Austin, right? I have a picture on my bathroom counter, right, of my wife and I at our wedding as we bowed our heads during our prayer, and somebody caught just an absolute perfect picture of him looking up at me. And, you know, so at, 8, 9 years old, right? So, you know, you look back at that picture. Austin's mom and I had decided that we were going to have Austin cremated, and we split everything, and she took one home and I took one home. So I see that every day in my life, right? So it's every day is, right? It's just part of the grieving process, because every day it's just, you see them, you know, and there's days where I stare at him up on the shelf, you know, and I've got his, you know, his urn, right? And it's a beautiful, like, blue leather box, and it's got the American flag on the front. One of the biggest things he wanted to do was go into the military. He never had the chance, but I've got that, and then on top of it, I've got this bracelet that sits, and I've got the part that says "Always Austin," you know, and then right next to it is a picture of him. You know, so it's just, you've got all these memories all over the house and all these pictures, and so you just constantly are looking at those things. But that also helps. You know, I remember somebody telling me a long time ago, like, you need to take down every picture in the house. You don't want any pictures of them anywhere. And I just, I remember being so angry when that person told me that, you know, and thinking back and going, you know, who are you to tell me not to put pictures up of my son? But in all honesty, man, I can't think of what life would be like if I couldn't see his face every single day, right? Because you live through, okay, I can't call him, right? Never going to hear his voice again. You know, never going to hug him again. My son had, and all the people that'll listen to this later on down the road, he had one of the goofiest laughs, right? But we're never going to hear that again. He's never going to aggravate me and wake me up at 3 a.m. playing video games. You know, it's you're not going to have those things, man, and you want them so bad.
Yeah.
You
I
know,
want him to piss me off so I can ground him again.
I do. I want him to piss me off. You know, but nothing or no one could ever fill the void of him being gone. There's no experience. There's no, you know, moving to Colorado didn't fill that void. It helped through that process. Getting involved in grief and helping other people doesn't fill that void, but it helps that process. You know, and it just has become kind of a mission now.
Well, and there's something, and I'd love to get your perspective on this, because this is just my own personal opinion, but there's something that seems to be therapeutic about the action, about the movement, about the forward progress. In other words, like, you see the people who don't deal with grief and who don't process the loss of a loved one, and they bottle it all up inside, and they don't talk about it. They don't, you know, everything gets, and slowly it builds up and builds up, and it becomes this big thing that takes over their life, and it's really detrimental to their mental health, or they have some big blow up, you know, years later, and, you know, it's this big traumatic event. But it seems to me like when you work through the process, when you do the work, when you keep talking about it, when you know, it's uncomfortable. You don't want to do it. You don't want to trudge up all those old emotions and stuff because it's not comfortable. But if you do, if you're willing to be uncomfortable, if you're going through the process like what you've done, then you grow from it. You get better from it. You're able to move on. You're able to, like you said, every time you tell the story, it gets a little bit easier. And eventually it gets to the point where it's not breaking you down into tears, as opposed to the opposite. You never talk about it. And so even just the thought of it can blow you up into a complete meltdown. But that action, I don't know, there's something about that action, talking it out, moving forward, steady progress. It just seems like it makes it a little bit more bearable.
Well, it does, and it's for me, going back to earlier, right? One of the 4 steps is honoring that loved one, right? And for me, it's every time I do something, whether it's this podcast or I recently completed my training to become a Stephen minister through the church, which is just really cool because it's if you're not familiar with it, Stephen ministry is just about helping people, and again, it's going back to you're not there to fix their problems. Like I'm not here to give you a solution. I'm here to talk to you. I'm going to ask you questions that maybe guide you, but I'm not here to give you the solution. Like you've got to figure that out on your own, and you've got to go through it. But even completing that, I knew what my drive was behind it, and my drive was to honor my son. And what's the best way that I can honor him than to continue to help people just like he did, and continue to be there for others, whether it's strangers, family, friends, it doesn't matter, to be there for other people, but to also at the same time, you're doing it through God. And for me, it's just such a huge driving force. And, trust me, in a lot of ways, it sounds like, man, he's really gotten through this. He's got it together, this, that, and the other. Trust me. I stumble every day. It is as hard as I try to live my life through God, there's things where I know he's looking down going, come on, Jason. You're better than that.
Lord knows he says that to me on a daily basis.
I'm really not understanding why you just said that or did that, but come on.
Or more like a smack in the back of the head. Come on, stupid.
Yeah,
get it
exactly.
together.
And who knows? It might even be Austin smacking me in the back of the head, but it's, man, it's just a driving force. And, it's funny. I woke up the other day and I had to reach out I have coffee every Friday with some guys from our life group, and we get together, and as one of the guys on there, we just get together and we bro it out, right? And we don't dive into the Bible. We talk some scripture sometimes, but it's really just getting together and broing it out, man, and just talking and what's going on in your life and what's going on in yours and how can we pray for you, and what are your prayers and what are your praises? What are you really praising God for in your life, and what do you need prayers on? And that's really what our group is about, and sometimes it's 45 minutes. I like that,
prayers and praises. That's cool.
It's really cool, man. And I tell you, the first time I heard it was when I started doing coffee with these guys about 1.5 years ago, and I mean, it's just been awesome, and it's something that we do. We meet every Friday, and we were shut down there for a while because of COVID, and so we were doing Zoom calls, and then once the world opened back up, then we started meeting in a parking lot, but it's just having even moments like that. And I reached out to them earlier this week on Monday because I woke up Monday and my son was just on my mind, man. And he was on my mind hot and heavy that day. Like I was holding back the tears. I was holding back just breaking down and crying. And it was just one of those days. Can't remember the last time I had a day like that. Right. But it was just one of those days. And, I just reached out to him, man, for prayers. I needed a sense of peace over me. And again, it just goes back to, God just pulls me through every inch of this, man, because I did that day. It was the first time in a long time. I didn't want to leave the house. I didn't want to go to work. I was getting in the shower to get ready for work when I really started feeling it really heavy. And this bracelet that I wear, I hadn't worn one in a long time. I kind of got tired of having a bracelet on, and I got tired of wearing one. And so I took it off, and my wife's even suggested, she's like, you ought to just get that bracelet tattooed on your wrist. Call it a day. Yeah. And, but I just, even before I got in the shower, like I ran and got one because I keep a bunch of them in my drawer, and I just put it back on because I just felt like I needed him. I needed Austin with me, and that was the best way to kind of do that and get through that. But again, it's just being able to reach out to people. And like I said earlier, I feel like I'm in stage 4 right now of honoring my son, but that was a day where I really just kind of needed step 1. Yeah. Right? I needed the first stage.
Well, yeah, it's like we were talking about before. It's okay to go back to those other steps. You're going to have those moments.
Absolutely.
From time to time. I think that's perfectly normal. Well, and I wanted to go back to talk about how you were saying about honoring the memory. And there's something that you guys have done down in Florida that's really neat to honor Austin's memory. Let's talk about that.
Yeah, so this year would have been year 2, but last May, so May of 19, we did our first annual 5K that we ran in Austin's memory, and we did it down in, I think we were in Oviedo, where we did it down in Oviedo, Florida, and down in the Orlando area. And again, we do something to honor them, and we do something that Dad can't stand to do, so we got to go on a run, and Dad even tried doing the whole couch to 5K and did all that stuff to help get me ready for it, and well, no, that didn't work. But so I know he was laughing at me, but it was just awesome, man. We had Operation Give Back was a huge sponsor of that, and we did it at a church that Austin had been going to down there, and the fire department came out and had a huge American flag posted up at it, and we had some of the military that were there just at different checkpoints on the 5K handing out waters and stuff. And
awesome.
It was cool, man. It was we had people travel in from I think we had 3 or 4 families from Maryland that had drove down to be with us and do this 5K with us.
Awesome.
Just, again, part of our tight-knit group.
Support, yeah.
Family from up there, again, Austin's godparents, and Austin's mom is born and raised Orlando, and so all of her family that was there. And I mean, man, we had friends come out of the woodworks that we hadn't talked to in 10 years that just knew what we were going through, had followed us on Facebook, and they showed up, and they were a part of the 5K. I mean, I had a guy that I worked with years ago in the health club business, and he and I stayed in touch on Facebook, and we ended up talking on the phone one night and kind of told him, everything that happened, told him about the 5K, and because we were wanting to connect, and he was like, I'll see you in Florida.
Yeah.
I mean, hadn't seen the guy in 10 plus years, man, and he came down, and
that's my first thought. It's like,
he spent
cool,
2 nights, and it's like,
I'm in.
I mean, it was just awesome, and just for people to come out and whether it's there to support us or whatever, the whole event was just really cool to see and honor Austin. And, the kids were involved, and the kids got medals, and, certain kids got to, win certain legs of the 5K. And, we had friends that did really well. And so it was just really cool to have that. And we didn't have it this year. I think COVID really kind of sliced everything up on that, but hopefully we get back to it next year. And
definitely.
If Austin's mom is up to it and the capabilities are there, I'd like to do it in different parts, maybe do a run out here or, something like that. I don't know, but just maybe move it around. If people are going to travel, traveling's traveling. And,
yeah, especially if people are willing to travel to do it, for sure.
Just a beautiful part of the country out here, and altitude might tickle some people a little bit, but
yeah, for sure. Well, hey, I'm 100% on board. So anything that I can do to support that or be involved with it, I would love to support it, promote it on the show, and all that kind of stuff too.
Very cool.
Yeah, I'd love to. And if nothing else, just to watch you guys suffer through 5 miles, that'd be fun.
Unreal.
I'm gonna run with you.
35 seconds was bad enough, man. 5 miles, you're killing me.
Okay, so there's 2 things. There's 2 stories or 2 experiences I'm going to ask you to share with us. One is. Thinking about Austin, what's one of your kind of go-to favorite memory with him? Mm-hmm. And then on the flip side of that, would you share a story about a time where he was driving you crazy, or a funny experience of him where it wasn't you were in love with your son because he's this sweet, perfect, innocent child, rather this obnoxious brat that you want to strangle half the time?
Man, so many good memories.
Or you can do it in reverse order if you'd rather get the ugly one out first.
Well, there's definitely an ugly memory, man, that pops up with me all the time, and it's just how I handled maybe a situation as a dad, right, that I look back on because I see a picture that hangs on our wall from that vacation that we took, and Austin was with us, and it was a situation as a father that you look back at and you really just wish you hadn't handled it that way. But, we were at a pool at a resort, and I guess my son decided he was going to pick on this little kid or whatever and kind of quote unquote bully him or whatever. And when we got out to the parking lot, he and I were talking about it, and he was telling me what he did, and it just kind of enraged me, man. And I got so mad, and I pushed him down to the ground, out on the asphalt parking lot. Right. And it hurt him. Right. And at the time, I'm thinking, okay, I want him to understand what this other little kid just went through from him, and I look back on it now, and maybe it's because of losing them or whatever, you regret a lot of things and you look back, but definitely not something I was proud of, but at the moment I felt like, I'm going to teach you a lesson. I want you to understand that a bigger person beating up or picking on a smaller person is just not the way to roll.
Right.
How does it make you feel?
Yeah.
And I look back on it now because I look at that picture and I remember that experience just so vividly with him, man. And like I said, it eats at me because he's gone, right? So, but it's just, it is what it is, man. It was just one of those experiences that, you wish you had back.
So what's one of your favorites?
So my favorite, there's two that come to mind. One is taking him to his very first Bulldog game.
Nice.
They came down to Orlando to the Citrus Bowl.
Oh, you didn't wait a second now. You took him to his first UGA game and it wasn't in Sanford Stadium now? What is going on?
It wasn't, man. We took him to Athens. We did the whole
okay,
thing
well,
there, but
as long as he got to experience it all.
He did get to, and I've got something really cool to say about that after
good.
this. But so yeah, I think we played Nebraska in the Citrus Bowl. So I got to take him to that game. So that was just super cool, man. Had a great experience with him on that and great time.
Watch him whoop Nebraska. That's always good.
That was fun. Yeah. We started off slow, which, Georgia, I love
notorious.
You, but can we please pick that pace up a little bit? But I think my most favorite, man, was the first season that I coached him in basketball. And he really wanted to play basketball, and Austin always had this grand vision that he was a great basketball player. And it wasn't until probably my son's sophomore, junior year of high school, he didn't have a whole lot of athletic ability. Thought he did, but he didn't. And I laugh about that now because
got that from his dad too, right?
He didn't understand. Easy now. Come on now. I can play some basketball. We talked about that earlier. Basketball and running is a little different.
That's very true. Very true.
But, it was funny because I don't think Austin ever really realized how to use his legs to run because he used to always run straight-legged. How he ran. He never would bend his knees, right? So I'm coaching him in basketball, and we had a great team. We went undefeated. We won the championship of the league that we were playing in, of seventh graders, I think it was. But we looked at it, and when I looked at, my team of 10 players, he was hands down my most improved player that entire season. Nice. And he went from starting off the season just not really understanding different things to at the end of the season, he was starting to score baskets in the game. He was starting to get rebounds. He was starting to understand plays. And I think proud dad moment, but just also just kind of seeing his excitement, the day that we got our trophies and they announced us as the champions and his excitement in that. I look back on that, man. And unfortunately our team name was the Tar Heels. Just
well,
so
in basketball, that's not necessarily that bad a thing.
No, it's not. But but anyway, no, I think those two, I think probably stand out.
Nice,
great moments. But the story I wanted to go back to with Athens real quick was, so after we lost Austin, Austin's sister Faith was looking at colleges, and because she knew Austin always wanted to go to Georgia, she decided to put Georgia in the schools that she wanted to go look at. So she looked at Georgia. She looked at Rollins down in Orlando, and I think there was one more, third, but I can't remember it. She ended up at Rollins, and doing great. But her and Austin's mom and Austin's stepdad took a trip to UGA to do the tour and everything. Well, they took some of Austin's ashes with them, and they spread some of his ashes just inside the arch to some bushes to the right.
Wow.
And if anything's going to make me lose it, it'll probably be that. But he'll always be in Athens.
Yeah.
Man, and it's just, he's in the dirt there now, and it's really cool.
That's really cool.
So.
We're going to do multiple of these where we go into the other stages of grief in more detail. So I'm going to go ahead and we'll wrap this one up.
If I can just reiterate, man, for anybody that's going to hear this, if you know somebody in grief or you're going through grief or whatever, figure out a way to get that other chair and fill that other chair. If you're going through grief, find somebody to fill that other chair. Get my number from Nate. Call me. Find me on Facebook, whatever. If I got to be a chair over Zoom or over the phone, I want to be. And grief is just not something that you mess with at the end of the day. So just figure out a way to talk to somebody and start that first step. And then, yeah, man, as we do 2, 3, and 4, we'll go over the next steps. And your new normal can be, believe it or not, a wonderful time. And that's hard to understand, right? Because you think of loss and wonderful, and really just two words that never go together. Your new normal can be a wonderful time. And right now I am kind of going through that wonderful time because I am getting to help people, and there's just such a rush behind that for me. So figure out what your new normal looks like and dive into it.
I'm glad you brought that up because that's been one of the buzzwords around right now that's been kind of bothering me, this new normal. And in the context of COVID, it really is disheartening to me to hear people talk about the way they are. But it all comes back to perspective. The perspective of the new normal doesn't have to be negative. It can be positive. It can be a better. And what I want everyone, whether it's COVID or whether you're dealing with any kind of grief or loss or whatever, that new normal should be better. That new normal can be a wonderful life with the tools and the things that you put in place and managing your life in the proper way. New normal can be a good thing. And so I'm going to try to reevaluate my take on that phrase and try to incorporate it into a more positive reference. But so you just said that people can reach out to me to get in touch with you, but I'm going to give you the opportunity to plug yourself, how people can find you, and then above and beyond that, I always give everyone the opportunity at the end of the show to promote a charity or organization that they support. So if you want to have anything to do with your church or whatever, don't feel like you have to put any social media or any information out there. But if folks do want to find you, where can they find you, and who do you support?
So again, Nate said my name early on, Jason Mueller. Feel free to look me up on Facebook. If you don't do Facebook, if you do LinkedIn, you can find me on there. I'm not a tweeter. I'm not an Instagram guy, so you're probably not going to find me there. But, you're welcome to look me up, send me a message or whatever. And if you want to shoot me your number or whatever, you're more than welcome to do that. And as far as anything that I can promote, I'm going to throw two things out there. Operation Give Back, which is huge for wounded vets, and just is an outstanding organization. Look them up. I definitely want to see them get some more recognition and get some more funding for the things that they're trying to do. But I also, if I'm going to end this, I'm going to end it really doing what I can to support Austin's stepdad through ALS. The man's fighting for his life, as so many ALS patients are, and you call it fair or unfair. Life is what it is. You can phrase it however you want to, but at the end of the day, this family went through the most tragic thing that we could have ever thought of with losing Austin, and now they're going through truly the fight of their life. And every day, you just don't know when his last day is going to be. So ALS research, ALS funding, ALS, just anything. Just look it up, study it, understand it. Because when it takes your body, it takes your body, and it's taken this man's body. And I've got all the love in the world for him and for that family. And so I think that's where I'll end it.
That's great, man. That's a perfect note to end on. It's so funny. I wouldn't expect anything different from you, man. We've known each other for a long time, and I didn't know you through any of this experience. But I knew you before. And I'm a big believer that God doesn't give us anything that we can't handle. And there's certain ones of us that he knows can handle a lot more than some of the rest of us. And I think he sometimes puts that burden on people like you because of what you have to offer the rest of the world and what your experience will mean to so many other people. And it's absolutely tragic what happened to your son. But the good that's going to come from that over the next generations, it's never worth it. You never wish that on anybody, but in the long term, in the grand scheme of life, it's going to make a big difference to a lot of people. And it's already made a difference to me personally, so I'm grateful for it. And I've known you for a long time, and if there's anybody who could handle a shitstorm of events like this, it's you.
Well, I appreciate that.
And I'm grateful to know you, man.
No, I am too, man. I'm glad we've got this reconnection, and hopefully it doesn't go away, and we'll continue these sessions. And
it's definitely not. There's
other stuff.
We got so much more in store. It's so funny. Again, God puts these people in our paths for some reason, and we've been apart for a while, but I think he brought us back together for a reason specifically. So I'm really excited about this. Is just the beginning of some of the conversations that we're going to have, and hopefully that none of you listening have to experience grief in the way that Jason's had to deal with it. But I know that all of us are experiencing some kind of grief with what's going on in the world right now, with all the mess that's going on. So hopefully you guys can take some of what you heard today and apply it to your life with what's going on right now. And if that helps you out a little bit, then that's great. And if there's anything that you want to know more about grief between now and then, if there's stuff that you would like us to cover between now and the next time we talk, DM us, shoot us email, just leave comments, whatever, and we'll make sure that we cover that on the next conversation as well. But thank you for your time. Thank you for your willingness to be open with us and to share your experience, man, because I know that's not easy for sure.
No, absolutely, man. Thank you.
Incredibly grateful. All right, man. We'll see you soon.
Absolutely, man.
All right, man. Take care. Hey, y'all. Thanks for listening. So, what'd you think? What did I miss? Was there a topic you wish we had covered? Was there an area of discussion you want to know more about? Or was the whole thing just too long? Please send us your questions and feedback on social media to @extraordinarypodcast or check out our website, extraordinarypodcast.net. Subscribe there for all the latest episodes, blog posts, and more. And if you're tired of living the same old ordinary life, shoot me an email, nate@extraordinarypodcast.net, and I will send you your own customizable blueprint that will walk you through step by step how to create your own extraordinary life. And if you or someone you know already fits the profile, you can submit a request to be interviewed on the website as well. Finally, if you like what you heard or learned today, please take a moment to like, subscribe, and follow the Extraordinary Podcast on all your favorite platforms like YouTube, Spotify, and iTunes. And if you feel inspired, show your support for the show by donating through Patreon. It is through this financial support that we are able to continue to bring to light ordinary people living extraordinary lives. Thank you for your support, and most of all, just being you. This is Nate G, and we'll see you next week.